Let's broaden the lens in the last few minutes that we have. The world is a complicated place, and outside the corporate world, what do you, when you look out and you read the news and you're engaged in these conversations with leaders, what do you think is sort of the most important ethics issue that the world faces today from your point of view? What keeps you up at night outside of Ethisphere?
I think transparency, and I would equate transparency to truth, or another way to say it is vulnerability. You know, I love Brene Brown's work, Larry Fink, and what he's been trying to do. I think the kind of normalization of the assault on the truth is really, it's a problem. And if you look at, you know, of course, we're still going through a global pandemic. None of us, certainly in my lifetime, have ever dealt with any. And I think the trauma that we've all experienced over the last 18 months is just now starting to come out. And I think we're going to be struggling for a long time. So being able to encourage vulnerability, being able to recognize that people need help are the types of things that I think also lead to a high performing organization.
My particular sort of passion as well. And I find it, for one thing, it topples ethics. There are no values that are not somehow connected to truth. It's very difficult to look at things like honesty or integrity or diversity, for that matter, even profit. So it's very difficult to look at values that are, all of them are somehow linked to truth. And if they're not, I would sort of question the choice, because there's no way to hold anybody accountable for the delivery of them. But I think the assault on truth is very dangerous. But also, you mentioned teenagers. You know, it's very dangerous that we're raising children and teenagers in a world that seems to think that truth is up for negotiation, or that truth is an option, or even that they can sort of custom design the world to be the way they want it to be. So it's a really sort of challenging confluence of things. And I think it's fantastic the way you've managed to take that challenge and in an organization like Ethisphere, and as you put it at the beginning, to be a rising tide organization and to have such a positive impact on so many large organizations that in turn have such a positive impact on so many people. And I love your link with vulnerability. I really appreciate Brene Brown's work, but you have to be willing to be vulnerable if you're going to commit to the truth. The truth isn't fun sometimes.
Right, and that's the foundation. You know, I was lucky enough, 10 years ago, I got asked to speak at something at Ford Motor. It was a conference they did called Trust is the New Black. It was pretty daunting. I was in between Steve Wozniak and Bill Ford. One of the things that, you know, that sort of came out was, how do you get people to trust you? And by and large, while the assault on the truth may have a loud voice, I strongly believe that by and large, people are good and they want to do good. I think our kids want to do good. I think teenagers, I think everybody. So I think the more examples that you can put forth of what good looks like, and that they're rewarded by more investors. I mean, the whole ESG thing right now, probably the loudest voice are like the rating agencies are taking it super serious. Investors are taking it super serious because they're realizing the benefits of attracting a set of people or a set of investors that believe companies have to do good. So, and that didn't exist maybe 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. So there's actually probably more trends. I mean, you talked about CEOs. We can talk CEOs in this, look them in the eyes and say, what are your policies around mental health in the workplace? And was that the case 3 years ago? I mean, the thing about human rights and human trafficking in the supply chain, I think all the things going on with conflict minerals over the past 10 or 15 years, that drove that. So it was really regulatory driven. But now, as you've talked about, it's principles driven, it's values driven, it's kindness, it's all accelerated by transparency.
Well, exactly. And it's also, I mean, what we heard, for example, with the Bangladesh garment factories and some of these kinds of situations, we heard, well, I can't know my supply chain. There are so many intermediaries. And my response, and this goes back many years, is yes, you can. You just have to make the effort. There are things that I work with that are unknowable. We don't know the impact of certain kinds of gene editing or artificial intelligence. A supply chain is a knowable thing if you have the effort and you make the investment. I think what you're talking about rewarding the good, and also on the flip side, that people are no longer going to tolerate